I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner here in Sedona. And Zeki had asked me, she told me she was doing this Women Arising. And she said, can you speak to these ladies? And I'm like, I am very good doing one-on-one consults with people. I can just blab away. But speaking in a group, I was like, oh, okay. So she had asked me to talk about women's health and women's cycles. So I thought, what am I going to speak about? And then I thought, let's talk about the moon cycles and how the moon cycles affect our physical body. Okay. And because I have a lot to share, I have a lot of good information with you, I also have my notes with me. So forgive me for reading from my notes, but I want to make sure that you get all of this. Okay. So first of all, cycles. We've been talking about cycles. Everything in Earth, everything in nature works in cycles. So we know, like the 24-hour clock, we have the day goes to night and back to day again. We have the seasonal cycles we're now in the autumn, heading into winter, into spring, into summer, and then back again. And also, even the way we sow and harvest our crops and our food, all of that also works in cycles. In fact, farmers will use the lunar cycles in order to know when to sow their crops, when to harvest their crops. And so all of nature, and nature being Mother Nature, being a feminine energy, works in cycles. And so women also work in cycles. So we know that obviously when we have our menstrual cycle, that we have this lunar cycle or this moon cycle. But what happens once the menstrual cycle is over? Once that we're going into perimenopause, into menopause, how do we then connect in with the cycles of nature? How do we connect in with the moon? The moon being the mother, right? We have the sun being the solar masculine and the moon being the mother. And why is this important that we continue to connect in with the moon? So let's look at the moon cycle a little bit. So I think most of you are familiar with this if you've been having your menstrual cycle for many years. But I'll just go over how we connect in with the moon, okay? So this is a 28-day cycle. This is the new moon, where we don't see any moon in the sky. And then about 2 weeks later, we get the full moon, okay? And ideally, what would happen is during our menstrual cycle, and what I'm speaking to, what I'm sharing with you today, is not just for women who are in their menstrual cycle, but this is perimenopause, postmenopause, all the way throughout a woman's lifetime, okay? So what happens is, from the new moon to the full moon, things are growing. It's in a waxing phase. From the next 2 weeks, from the full moon to the new moon, is a waning phase, so the moon gets smaller and smaller. And the same thing that we have to remember is that our bodies, women's bodies, are directly connected. This is like an equal sign. A woman's energy is exactly equal or related to the moon. So what happens is, now we're in a society, in a culture, where we have electricity. And so the lights are on, we're up till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, We're not necessarily working with the light of the moon, we're really more working with the light of electricity. So in times when there was no electricity, women, their cycles would be very much connected. On the new moon is when they would bleed, and then on the full moon is when we would ovulate, because that's when we're the most fertile, right? But because of electricity and because of our lifestyle, we're on the computer late at night or whatever it is, we're not necessarily connected to the moon. And the way this works is that our pineal glands are what secrete a hormone to tell the ovaries it's time to release. And the way the pineal gland gets this information is through the moonlight, okay? So when the moon is bright, then the egg is ready to be fertilized. And when the moon is dark, when there's not enough light, that's when we shed, okay? And so this, in Ayurveda or in Vedic culture, this section of the month is considered the Lakshmi phase. So things are becoming more and more abundant, prosperous, full, right? We feel more and more beautiful. They say they've done studies where a woman's face is actually the most beautiful during the ovulation cycle or during the full moon cycle. And then this cycle, from the full moon to the new moon, is considered the Kali, or the dark moon phase, right, as it's going this way. And this is the cycle when we're more cleansing, releasing. And then this is the cycle where there's more rejuvenation and growth. Okay? And so what we want to do is, even after our menstrual cycles are finished, it's interesting because I just turned 40 this year, and my daughter, she just turned 12, so she's now entering into puberty, and I'm starting to look at, okay, now, I'm going to be going into perimenopause, in the next however many years. But so I've really been understanding, how do these moon cycles work? So, so just to kind of have an idea of this moon cycle when I go towards the next notes. Okay, so in this area, the second chakra is called the Swadhisthana chakra. And if any of you were here this morning when we were dancing outside, early this morning at 7:30, it was really beautiful, and we worked on this second chakra. And I want to show you the picture of the symbol of the second chakra. So the second chakra is our reproductive organs, our creativity, our sex organs, all right? So this is the symbol of the second chakra, and you could pass this around if you can't see it so well. But in the second chakra, called the the Swadhisthana chakra, there's actually a moon. Can you see that moon? And this is the symbol of the second chakra. And what it's saying is that this power center over here, our creative power center, is directly related to the moon. And oftentimes you'll see the symbol of Shakti, or the symbol of a woman, is like this. You see that sacral, that triangle, and in the middle there's a dot, like that. And so this Shakti, or feminine power center, is right here in the sacral area. And this dot is like a magnet, or this Shakti that's here, it's called Shakti Prana. Shakti means feminine, right, or the female, and prana is energy, or so it's like feminine power, feminine energy is right here. And this Shakti Prana is like a magnet. So what it does is it pulls the soma, the lunar energy, down into this area. And then the element that's also related to this area is water, right? So the root chakra is earth, and then the second chakra is water. So you could see it in these pictures, and I'll pass it around so you can get a better view. And that's like the traditional symbol of this second chakra. So like I said, what I'm going to share with you now, the practices to do around the different times of the moon cycle, is for everyone, specifically for women who have already completed their menstrual cycle. They're no longer bleeding, because this is a really good way for us to then become reconnected to the lunar cycle. Okay? And so I want everyone to read this with me, just so you really understand where what this means, okay? A woman's energy is directly related to the moon, okay? So when we're in the new moon phase, our energy is very low. It's at its lowest point when there's no moon in the sky, okay? And so we don't have a lot of extra energy to disperse and give out. This is the time of the month we really need to go inwards, okay? So what you should do, look at your calendar, look up online, when is the new moon, okay? So each month we'll have a new moon. Find out when the new moon is, and on your calendar, literally write, rest, relax, okay? Because what happens is, when we're not resting and relaxing during this time, we are using up stored energy. We're actually depleting ourselves. We're using adrenal energy that we don't have, okay? We're getting burnt out. So it's very important at this time. This is the time that we need to rest, and it's maybe a day or two before the new moon, a day or two after the new moon. So take this actually whole week from here, from the waning phase, from day, say this is day 15, day 21 to day 28, is really a time of slowing down and reducing our activity. So that means if for some reason you have to travel at this time, you're going to feel more depleted, because you know when we travel, the time changes, we become more fatigued. Just getting on and off the plane or on a road trip, we become tired, and we're really depleting ourselves when we're using extra energy at this time. And in fact, like in certain cultures, like the red tent, when you're bleeding or when you're in this new moon time, you don't even go into the kitchen and cook, because it's more work for you, it's more depleting. So instead you'll be resting at this time. And the reason is because at this time when there's no moon in the sky, is that when we are the most psychic, when we have the most sort of intuitive abilities. So this is the time when we actually want to be alone. We want to not be, in India, people live in joint families. So you have the cousins and the aunts and uncles and everybody. So if I'm bleeding, then I could go be in the red tent, and then I have other people who can take care of all the home responsibilities, you know, taking care of the kids or cooking or whatever. But in this society, we're all kind of on our own, and so we have no one to cover us. And so we end up working through this time, during this new moon time or during the time that we're bleeding. And we become very depleted. And so not to plan any social events during this time, because doing a lot of talking and socializing, even though we enjoy our friends, it's again putting energy outwards, okay? So very little physical activity. It's really the time to remain quiet and inward reflection. This is the time when our dreams are the most powerful. So we want to do more dream work and kind of look at our dreams. In fact, they say that the red blood, you know, you see women wearing this, Indian women, Hindu women wearing this bindi. Traditionally, I mean, now they use a sticker or they use the red powder or the kumkum, but traditionally it was the red blood, your menstrual blood. You would put it here, and what it is, it's opening up the vision, the ability to be prophetic, to have that sort of strong intuition, okay? And so this is the time that we don't want to do a lot of talking, but more meditating, going inwards. What's happening in my life? What do I need to release? What do I need to shed? What do I need to let go of? All right? It's a very highly creative time. And so we don't want to disperse our energy during that time. And so if you're bleeding, then you would just kind of stay inwards. But if you're, say, postmenopausal or perimenopausal, what you would do is you would still conserve your energy this week or around these days, okay? And one of the rituals that you can do is take sea salt. Like, so you make it like a ritual, you light a candle, you go in your bathroom and, you know, take out your nice towels or whatever, you know, and your robe. And what you do is you take some sea salt, and sea salt is a favorite of like Venus or Aphrodite. She comes from the ocean. So it connects us again with the goddess. And we take this sea salt, you could mix it with olive oil, you could mix it with essential oils, whatever you like, and rub it on your body, okay? Scrub your body. You could do this in the shower if you like. Then you scrub it and we exfoliate. And as we're doing this, there's sort of a little ritual that we can say. I release all outdated old beliefs and attitudes, release all hurts and little disappointments that I experienced over this past month, and I wash away all the negative beliefs that no longer serve me, and I am renewed. And then you rinse yourself off after you do that scrub. So literally your body is exfoliated, and also all those disappointments that we've kind of experienced, the hurts, the pain, all of that stuff over the month is then released. And after you've cleansed, that's when it's time to set the intention for the next month. So for this Lakshmi phase, for the growing phase. So we can set our intention at that time. Okay, so some of the new moon practices that we can do is every month during the new moon time, so you're going to write in your calendar to keep some free time for yourself and not to get too busy. The other thing you could do is keep special jewelry that you wear during the new moon, and a different special jewelry that you could wear during the full moon, okay? So one of the things that you could wear during the new moon is moonstone, okay? And there's some beautiful jewelry up there, so you guys can look. But this is a moonstone, and when you look carefully at it, you can see all the different facets and the colors. And some of the properties, I'll pass this around. Some of the properties of moonstone is that, number one, is it stimulates the endocrine system in the body. So what it does is it helps to start balancing hormones, okay? So moonstone is meant for women during their moon time, whether they're bleeding, or even for women during the new moon, okay? It's almost like a protection or a talisman, even. And it increases psychic ability. So when you look at the stone, you can even see that it has like all these different colors. It almost looks like a dreamy state. Okay. And it brings, and because it stimulates the endocrine system, it brings awareness of the hormonal system. Okay, and all the shifts. Another thing you could do is if you're no longer bleeding, and even if you are, but if you're no longer bleeding, carnelian is very good to wear during the new moon, because that reminds, carnelian or garnet even. Garnet are these red colors, and it helps to remind us that we're going inwards. It's the time of bleeding. Okay? And so garnet helps to keep us grounded. Carnelian is directly related to the second chakra. It's like that orangish color, and so it helps with the sacral chakra and strengthening that. Another remedy that you can do is using castor oil. Has anybody done castor oil packs? Okay. So specifically doing it around the new moon is very helpful. So for women who are bleeding, who are in their menstrual cycle, it's very good for like blood clots, for cramping, for constipation, anything that's happening where we want to cleanse out body aches, delayed flow. But also for women who are not bleeding, massaging the abdomen with the castor oil, it helps with uterine fibroids, with cysts, and also massaging the breast with the castor oil. That also helps with like fibrocystic breasts and like kind of painful breast or things like that. And so very important, you can kind of take some time for yourself, do a little castor oil pack, lay down, put a warm hot water bottle on there, and give yourself that time to rest. Okay. The other thing, foods, very important during this time, is to avoid caffeine and to avoid alcohol. Okay. So we don't often remember these things because we're not so in tune with the lunar cycles. But when you write it down on your calendar, it'll be easier to remember. Because caffeine and alcohol and heavy foods, they're all going to deplete us. They're going to take away energy that we already don't have during this time. Okay. And then foods that you should eat are very light foods, easy to digest foods, things like soups, stews, porridge. In Ayurveda or in Indian cooking, we make like mung beans and rice, khichdi, if anybody knows that. So something that's very easy to digest, because you don't want to take more body energy to digest your food. You want that energy to be with you so that you could have that psychic ability, you could have that intuition, and you could have that energy available to access your dreams. Okay? And if you are bleeding, then important foods to eat at that time are iron-rich foods like beets or spinach, dates, figs, soaked raisins, things like that, red lentils. So another very good practice that you can do during the new moon, and particularly for women who are, again, no longer bleeding, is doing a, it's called an herbal douche. In Ayurveda, it's called Uttara Vasthi. Okay, Uttara, U-T-T-R-A, means the uterus, okay? And Vasthi means to hold, okay? So what we're doing is we're not doing a cleansing douche at that time, we're doing a nurturing douche at that time. So I just bought these at Walgreens, okay? And then you buy these, but you don't really use the liquid that's in there. That's like a mineral solution. We don't want that. You open it up and you pour out the mineral solution, and instead you fill this with a nourishing tea, okay? So some of the things that we use are like aloe vera, okay? Are you guys familiar with Aloe vera. So if you have a fresh aloe vera plant, you could actually scrape out the gel from the inside as an organic aloe vera plant, or you can buy the ingestible kind of aloe vera gel, okay? And the reason we use aloe vera is because it's very, very nourishing to the reproductive tissues. In fact, in Sanskrit, the word for aloe vera is kumari. Kumari means virgin or young maiden, okay? And when you use aloe vera, what it does, it has a strong affinity for youthing, is that a word? Youthing, or rejuvenating the reproductive tissue, because it means virgin, okay? And it's very cooling and calming. And also if you've touched aloe vera, it's very like lubricating and kind of like goopy, right? And that's what we need, because our uterus, our tissues become dry. They get dried out. And what this does is it kind of reminds us that this is the water element, and the water element is what heals this chakra, okay? So what we use is aloe vera, and then you mix it with certain herbal teas. So things that you could mix it with are like rose. You boil some rose leaves or steep rose leaves, and then you can get rose water. You can use red raspberry. That's also very good for the uterus. Licorice. Licorice has a very slimy or like kind of, like a slimy quality when you use licorice, because it lubricates. And so that's another one that we use for this tea. And triphala. Triphala is an Ayurvedic cleanser. It's an herbal powder that helps to detox and cleanse. And so you can prepare a tea like this, and if you're not sure what to use, you can ask me, and depending on your age, on your constitution, like your metabolic rate, your dosha, and whatever your specific health conditions are, you can prepare a tea, and you mix it with the aloe vera gel. And then what you would do is lay in the bathtub. So you could fill the water just a little bit so that it's warm, okay? It's warm, and you lay down, and you can even put a towel down if you like. And you insert this, it's not a douche that you're cleansing, it's more of this tea that you're putting into the uterus to hold. And when you do that, it reconnects us with that Shakti prana, it reconnects us with the water element, and it reconnects us with this moon, okay? And, and they say by doing this every month on the new moon, it will rebalance your hormones. So if you do it for, like say for the next 6 months, if you write it down on your calendar, like every new moon, I want to do this, it will reshift your entire hormonal system. And women who are bleeding, if they're not bleeding on the new moon, say if their period comes sometime in this or here, then they're out of sync with the moon cycle. And so what they would do is then, if they were to do it for about 6 months, then their cycles will automatically go back to bleeding on the new moon and ovulating on the full moon. So they said that women who have done this, they've been able to really heal things like cervical cancer, uterine cancer, breast cancer, anything that is hormonally related is really helped by doing these type of practices on the new moon. So again, it's reconnecting us with that prana, the Shakti prana, and it's a traditional Ayurvedic practice. And what women describe it is that it brings a glow back to the womb. And like each month as they do it, they're glowing brighter and brighter. They can feel the water in this area, they can feel the energy in this area, they can feel the prana, and they can feel the healing of the entire womb. Okay? And what happens is when we don't take advantage of this new moon time, then we really threaten that vital Shakti that we have here. Okay? And that douche, I mean, you leave it in as long as you want, as long as you feel comfortable, and then you're already laying in the bathtub, and then when you're ready to, maybe you'll hold it 5 minutes, maybe you'll hold it 15 minutes or half an hour, and then you just release it, and then it just releases right into the water, and then you can drain it out. And that's a time that you really can put your hands on this area, hold, and connect it with the womb energy, okay? And what happens is that when we're going all month long in full gear, we're not really paying attention to the moon cycles, and we're just all month long, we're busy, we're busy, we're busy, we're busy, we're busy, we're doing all kinds of things. Our energy get really dispersed. And then what happens is that that's when all the hormonal imbalances start coming in. So things like irregular cycles, heavy bleeding, scanty bleeding, or fibroids, cysts, all kinds of hormonal problems. And the other thing that happens is when our energy gets depleted, we have adrenal burnout, and then our thyroid goes, right? And I know so many women that come to me as clients, they tell me, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, right? And how many people here, they feel like they're running around, they're spinning their wheels, right? And it's because we're not connected in with this lunar wheel. And so as women, we have to take this time to rest, okay? And then you build throughout the rest of the month times where you can have increased energy or more social activity. But to remember to take that time. And it's when this Shakti prana is blocked, when there's congestion, stagnation, energetic and also physical, that's when we have all kinds of reproductive issues, hormonal challenges, right? We feel like we're aging much more quickly, right? And so it's time to then reconnect with this lunar cycle. And by doing that, it will bring more harmony into your hormones. Okay? So I wanted to talk about menopause for a few minutes. Okay? So menopause is the initiation into the dark goddess. So this Kali that we're talking about, we're at perimenopause, menopause, we're going into this Kali phase, this dark goddess. And there's many different traditions, people, the dark Madonna or whatever. And so what happens is that people become very afraid of death and afraid of this like dark energy, this Kali energy. You see the Vajra Yogini, I mean, she's fearful looking, right? Or fierce looking. And men in particular, and the society that we're living in, this patriarchal society, becomes very afraid of the dark goddess. And so what happens is because they're afraid of death, you know? We, just as a culture, we're afraid of death. And so when women start entering into this phase of the new moon, this dark goddess moon, the crone, people become very afraid, and then we run to the doctor and say, oh, I need hormone replacement, I need something, you know, so that I can remain young. Or just society in general then starts to reject the older female, or you feel like, oh, I'm not, you know, I'm not part of society. Oftentimes, older women will go and be more alone, okay? And that's because in our society, this, up until now, but this patriarchal masculine society, it's a linear society. So you have a beginning and you have an end, okay? The end means death, right? So when you're towards the end, that means death, it's done, it's over, right? And so that's why many men, they want women who are like 20 years younger, right? 30 years younger. They don't want to go this way. And so we become a society afraid of death, afraid of the aging woman, afraid of the dark goddess, afraid of entering into this period. But what we have to remember is that we're not this patriarchal linear society. We are a circular, cyclical society, and as women we understand that, right? Because after death becomes rebirth, right? Comes regeneration. But the patriarchal society of control doesn't understand that. Well, we as women, we understand as you get into the new moon, then you're getting into this rebirth, regeneration. And so what happens during menopause or post-menopause is that actually all these years when you were bleeding and the egg was being released, that was a form of creativity or potential creativity. And instead, now that creativity, that dark blood, stays within. And all those things you may have put aside in your life, like so for example, I'm raising my daughters, there's many sacrifices that I make. Or when you raise your children, there's many sacrifices that you make for your family. Or, for example, oftentimes in my life, I've made choices depending on what this man is going to think, you know. And so what we do is, throughout our life, we kind of don't really honor our true talents and our true gifts because we're making sacrifices either for raising the family or for, how am I going to keep this man, in tune with me. And so now, once you go into this crone phase or you go into this Kali phase, the menopausal phase, instead of releasing that egg and having a potential creativity, you're keeping that in, and then you could experience even higher levels of creativity because we're not releasing the egg, we're holding on to it, right? And so this is a time of deep creativity. And remember I was saying the new moon is the time of intuition and creativity. So it's when you pass through this Kali phase and then enter into the crone phase, that's when the real creativity and the real deep intuition begins, okay? And so we want to honor that. And so we don't want to be afraid, right? Okay. Okay, so the dark goddess, what she does is she really helps us through times of transformation. So the deepest, darkest times of our life, she is holding our hand. She helps us to go deep into our psyche, discover those little scary demons that are in the psyche, and then we can transform through those challenges and then walk out of it and come into this rebirth. Okay? And so we want to honor that dark goddess. And it's very important that we share in culture, we share with men. They're very afraid of, this ending, the death, this dark goddess. And so we want to say this is really the best time in a woman's life because she's not dispersing her energies out or making choices based on what other people think. She's really kind of keeping that energy inwards. And the other thing is she's kind of like a snake who's ready to shed her skin, okay? She's itchy, she's uncomfortable, she's irritable. So oftentimes, right before you right before you start bleeding, before you start your menstrual cycle, I would become very irritable. I would yell at whoever is around me, or I would just get kind of antsy. Same thing, when women are going into this menopausal phase, when they're in the dark goddess phase, they start to become a little bit more they want more solitude. They kind of will even create situations where they can get irritable or they're kind of pushing people away, okay? And you may pick a fight with somebody or whatever. You kind of push people away. And the reason we do that is because we need that time of solitude. We need that time alone. And the reason we need that time alone is so that we can go into those deep creative spaces and work deeply in the psyche. But when there's a lot of people around us, we can't do that. And so unconsciously, often I'll find many women will move to Sedona or move away from their hometown or start a new change in life where they want to be more alone and kind of on their own when they're entering into this time frame. Okay. And it's because we want that solitude during this time of life. Okay. Okay, so how much time do we have, Stephanie?
Another 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. I have some practical tips about hot flashes and herbs and things like that. So if you want to hear about that, come to me, okay? I'll give you all those good herbs and things about hot flashes and other menopausal tips.
Put the tips down.
Okay.
You put one tip, two,
I have a couple, but there's something else that I want to talk about that's even more important. Okay. So I have tips on hot flashes and tips on food. Well, one of the good tips on food is to eat lots of fats at this time, okay? So good oils, good avocado, chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, oils, ghee, coconut oil, because this is the time when there's the most dryness. This is the time when we have the most fluid, right? And then what happens during menopause also, our tissues become dry. Our skin becomes dry, our hair becomes dry, the vagina becomes dry, right? We want to have more oils and fats and fluids at this time, okay? This is also a very good time. Some women will complain during menopause that they put on weight or it's not easy to take off weight. And so one of the things that's really good to do is it's called lunar fasting, okay? So you fast during the new moon and you fast during the full moon. So this means you're fasting twice a month. And you could fast on all fluids. So either you could drink water, tea, vegetable juices, fruit juices. My favorite is to fast on milk. I like to use full fat, like whole cow's milk, organic cow's milk. But if not, you could do coconut milk or almond milk, and then you put spices in it. It's called moon milk. And you make moon milk with like some saffron and cardamom and ginger and cinnamon and things like that. And you fast during these 2 times. And the reason is because the new moon is the time of the deepest detox. So literally when we're bleeding, we're cleansing and detoxing. But this is also, if you feel like you're gaining weight, fast during the new moon and you'll find that you'll lose a lot of weight, a lot of water at that time. The other thing is to fast during the full moon, because this is when we gain the most weight. This is when we put on the most weight, is because it's a time of fullness. And so we tend to eat more and we tend to hold on to that weight. So if you're doing some kind of fluid fast or water fast, again, you're tying into the moon, because you know the moon affects the tides and the oceans, and it affects the water in our own body. Okay? And so,
how many days would that be, the fast?
Excuse me?
The fast, would that go for during the new moon and the full moon for how many days?
You could do it for 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
And it's easy. I mean, I'm sure all of you have done some kind of juice fast or water fast. But if you do that twice a month, it's a very good way. That's the best time to detox. And this is the best time when we put on weight during the full moon. So this is a good time to fast. And another thing about fasting is that it has a very spiritual aspect to it. So when you fast, you're not using the energy to cook and to think about what I'm going to eat and digest. Instead, your energy is more available to you to have clearer thoughts. Have you noticed when you eat less, you can maybe have clearer thoughts and clearer vision? And so this is the time when you fast, you can set intention and you can create miracles in your life. And so what I mean by this is, like in India, women will say, okay, I'm going to fast every full moon for the next, 4 or 5 full moons. Or I'm going to fast every Monday. Monday is the day of the moon. Okay? It's also the day of Lord Shiva and Parvati, his consort. And so when you set an intention to fast, then you're setting your mind towards the spiritual as opposed to the mundane. You're not thinking about cooking and cleaning up the kitchen and eating and digesting. Instead, you're going to use that time to have some spiritual practice. You could do a mantra. A great mantra is Om Som Somaya Namaha, and I can give that to you afterwards. Soma is the energy of the moon, that lunar energy. So you can fast, you could do mantra, you could color those mandalas, So that's a good thing to do on a Monday. And when you do that, if you set intention, say, I'm going to fast for the next 16, this is a very common one in India. I'm going to fast for 16 Mondays, or I'm going to fast for 16 full moons, okay? And what that does is you set an intention, I want to achieve this in my life, or I want to have this particular blessing, or I want to shift this energy, or I want this person to come into my life. And as you do that intention and you hold it and you fast and you use that time for prayer and meditation, you'll find that those miracles, those manifestations come true. And it's called a vrat. There's a particular word for it. A vrat means a vow. And when you complete that vow, then those miracles do come into your life. But it's very tricky because things will always come along to kind of stop us from that fast. Either we travel or we have guests over or something happens. And because I tried to do 16 Mondays in a row, and it's very hard because something always comes along and I'm like, oh, I just have a little bit of that, or I forget, or something happens. But to hold that vow, you'll be able to manifest things in your life and create things in your life. And this is a good time to do that, the milk recipe that I was talking about, the moon milk, and kind of just fast on that, because it brings more soma, which is that nurturing, nourishing, milky, motherly energy. And it comes directly from the light of the moon. So some of the things to do during the full moon, of course, is to celebrate, to get together with friends, to gather, to enjoy one another, to be more expressive. And they say when the moon is full, that's when the light of the soma is totally available to us. So the light of the moon is directly available to us during the full moon. So to be out in the full moon, to full moon bathe, lay out at the full moon, that's the time you want to wear pearls. okay? You can have your pearls during the full moon. Okay. And so it's between this waxing and waning phase of the moon and this between the phases of being social and being inward, where all of these sort of emotional balances come in and out. And we kind of keep fluctuating throughout the month. But if we stay on this lunar cycle, then we can kind of conserve our energy and then put out our energy, and we're not becoming depleted, and we're hormonally imbalanced and energetically imbalanced. So I'm going to end it because the time is over. But if anybody has any questions or things, I can answer it afterwards.